Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Ben Clarke and you're listening to Freshaphonica, the audio documentary podcast featuring stories from music and entertainment history. This episode is entitled The Soundtracks of Curtis Mayfield, and I take a look at the 6 legendary movie scores Curtis composed in the 70s, giving everyone a lesson in how to put music to film.
This is Freshaphonica, you mothers.
A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3.
His name is Curtis Mayfield.
Curtis Mayfield.
Curtis Mayfield.
Mr. Curtis Mayfield. Keep from dying.
I played guitar, but my guitar was tuned to the black keys of the piano, which was somewhat unorthodox. It wasn't rock and roll, it wasn't gospel, it wasn't quite contemporary, but it was Curtis.
In 1971, 2 important films were released in the US which spawned a new cinematic genre. The films were Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song starring Melvin Van Peebles and Shaft featuring Richard Roundtree.
Yeah, well, stay loose, baby.
These films were unique because they featured a mainly black cast and production team and were made specifically to appeal to an African American audience.
Badass cinema.
Both films were made on a budget but were very successful at the box office, and it showed filmmakers that there was a large and lucrative black audience who were very interested in films that reflected their everyday lives. As a result, over 200 of these types of films were made in America in the 70s and subsequently became known as blaxploitation films.
It just meant that they'd found a way to tap into a black audience, and we exploit the dollars that they have by making movies for them, by them, that are about them. It didn't mean that they were exploiting our sensibilities or anything else. It was just trying to make a dollar.
While the quality of some of the blaxploitation movies varied, they usually featured incredibly funky soundtracks by some of the best funk and soul artists of the 70s. Sweet Sweetbacks had been done by Earth, Wind and Fire, while Shaft had an incredible soundtrack by Isaac Hayes, which even won him an Academy Award.
And the winner is Isaac Hayes' theme from Shaft.
I'd like to thank the Academy, and I'd like to thank the Stax organization for encouraging me to score a motion picture. Thank you.
After such recognition, it became fashionable to jump on the blaxploitation movie soundtrack bandwagon. And what a bandwagon! Marvin Gaye, James Brown, Donny Hathaway and Roy Ayers are just some of the big names that put music to film and helped create a genre of music responsible for some of the funkiest grooves you can imagine.
Coffee is the color.
I have to be commercial if I'm to be heard at all. So I could not 10 years ago come out talking about we're a winner or I'm black and I'm proud overall, because it would have never been played.
We're a winner. And never let anybody say, boy, you can't make it, cause some people mind is in your way. No more tears do we cry, and we have finally dried our eyes. We're moving on up. On up. Lord have mercy, we're moving on up now. We're moving on up.
By the early 1970s, one of the hottest names in soul and R&B was Chicago's Curtis Mayfield. With his group The Impressions, Curtis had built up a reputation as one of soul music's most prolific and articulate songwriters, as well as an influential guitarist. Curtis had become a one-man hit factory. He provided a huge amount of songs for other artists as a staff writer for the OK Records label, while simultaneously composing most of the songs he recorded with The Impressions. Former Impressions bandmate Fred Cash remembers Curtis's writing habits.
Late at night, that's when Curtis would do most of his writing, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you might hear a knock on the door. Hey, Fred, come here and listen to this particular song. He'd have his robe on and his guitar sitting on side of the bed playing.
I loved and I lost. It happens to the best.
Several of his songs had become important anthems of the civil rights movement, and Curtis increasingly became known as a socially conscious songwriter, able to take what he saw in the streets around him and put his message into song.
If you had a choice of colors, which one would you choose, my brothers? If there was no day or night, which would you prefer to be right?
The inspiration coming from him gave people, I guess, the audacity to have hope and strength in the blizzard of chaos. Whatever road that Curtis Mayfield wanted to take with the music, the community followed in the same vein. It was almost like he was a soundtrack to our everyday lives.
You know, people have a tendency to say that Curtis is perhaps a black Bob Dylan. I would say that Bob Dylan is perhaps a white Curtis.
If you would ask somebody, where's Curtis? They'd ask you, you mean the Reverend? Or they would ask you, you mean the preacher? Most of the time it would be, where's the Reverend? Where's the preacher? Everybody nicknamed him that. I don't think he knew they were calling him that.
Sisters, niggas, whiteys, Jews.
In 1970, Curtis had broken from the Impressions and launched his solo career with an album that contained some of his boldest and hardest hitting tracks of his career to date.
What's the title?
If there's hell below, we're all gonna
go. That's a hell of a statement. Track 1.
Sisters, brothers and the whiteys, blacks and the crackers, police and their backers, they're all political actors. Hurry, people running from their worries, while the judge and his juries dictate the law that's partly flawed.
A soul man at the top of his game and with an ability to communicate powerful messages through music. It was perhaps no surprise that Curtis was approached with a film script backstage after a gig in 1971 with an offer to provide the soundtrack for the movie. Little did he know, however, that this offer would give him the biggest commercial success of his career and immortalise him in music history.
This dude is bad, and he ain't just fly. He's Superfly, yeah, Superfly. When it comes to women, they come to him, but it's still not enough. He wants a big score, $1 million in cash, yeah, the big one.
This is a chance, and I want to take it now, before I have to kill somebody.
Freshaphonica, the audio documentary podcast.
Hi, I'm Curtis, and I'm so glad that I've got my own, so glad that I can see. I've got a natural hide. The man can't put no thing on me, and he can't put no thing on you either. Keep your nose clean. Don't be no junkie. Remember, Freddie's dead.
Superfly was the story of Priest, a sharply dressed drug dealer from Harlem who wanted to do one last deal before getting out of the business for good. It was directed by Gordon Parks Jr., the son of famous life photographer and director of Shaft, Gordon Parks. Gordon Sr. was initially sceptical about his son following in his footsteps and directing the movie with only a $75,000 budget.
Sure enough, he ran out of money the first week of shooting. And he came back and said, I need your help. I said, well, I told you so. And I said, I'm sorry. And Gene said, oh, come on, Gordon. You made your first film. Gordon needs help now. Why don't you help him? I said, okay. So I wrote a check, and I didn't hand it to the producer. I handed it to Gordon and closed my eyes. I said, good luck. And of course, Superfly made millions. It was a very successful film.
Clean, bad machine, super cool, super mean, feeling good for the man. Superfly, here I stand, secret stash, heavy bread, baddest bitches in the bed. I'm your pusher man.
Curtis was pleased to do the music as it gave him an opportunity to expand his musical boundaries and try something different. But he was concerned that the movie glamorised drugs, and he was keen to put cautionary messages in his songs about the consequences of a life of crime, as his wife Altheda explains.
Curtis kept saying over and over again, it's nothing but a commercial. The way they shot it, the way they filmed it. And you got a whole segment in here where you're sitting here watching people chop up dope. Everybody thought it was cute. And there's nothing cute about dope, not the realities of it. You live by the gun, you're gonna die by the gun. And he did a good job of expressing that.
Eddie, you should know better. Brother, you know you're wrong. Think of the tears and fears you bring to your folks back home. They'd say, where did he go wrong, my Lord? We planned and worked hard from the very start. Tried to make him better than all the rest, but the brother proved to be so much less.
Superfly did present somewhat of a challenge, and for me, there was a depth in the movie that was very relevant as to black people and the going-ons in a certain percentage of the ghetto area. You know, I think a lot of people tend to think that a ghetto is just all one particular thing, which means everybody's playing and dealing dope and the whole bit, which isn't so. It's really just a small crime area, hustle area, just as any other part of our neighborhood, black or white.
For me, the Freddie's Dead, I was stimulated from the character Freddie. And he seemed to basically be a nice guy. He kind of got the short end of the stick. And he, of course, died in the movie. So my heart sort of fell for him.
Freddie's dead. That's what I said. Let the man rap a plan, said he'd send him home. But his hope was a rope, and he should have known.
Fat Freddie, man. Matter with the fat man. The dude ain't got your money.
Priest, you know me, man. You'll get your money.
Yeah, when? This ain't the first time for you, Trick. I've had to wait for as long as a month on you for my money. If you don't get me my money tonight, I'm gonna put that young girl of yours out on Horse Road.
Listen, Priest, that's my wife you talking about, man.
So what? Now, somebody's going to work tonight, Freddie. You really shouldn't have fucked with my money, Freddie.
So the only way I could come back was to make him some type of example, what the results might be if you happen to be of that misfortune.
But that's how it goes. Freddie's on the corner now. If you want to be a junkie, wow. Remember, Freddie's dead.
The Superfly soundtrack was a massive success for Curtis, going to #1 in both the American R&B and pop charts. The album was certified double platinum, and the singles Superfly and Freddie's Dead were both million sellers. Curtis was now a superstar, and though he would never quite match the commercial success of Superfly again, the Mayfield name became synonymous with quality. It opened a lot of doors for Curtis, including the opportunity to compose further movie soundtracks.
Ooh, Superfly. You're gonna make your fortune by and by. But if you lose, don't ask no questions why. The only game you know is do or die. Superfly.
Freshaphonica, audio documentaries.
Thank you ever so much. You've been a very warm crowd. We would like to maybe close out with something for you that may lend a bit of food for thought, hopefully a bit of inspiration. A song taken from from a movie known as Claudine, where I've had the pleasures of preparing music for Miss Gladys Knight and the Pips. Little song goes a bit something like this.
To be invisible will be my claim to fame. A girl with no name, that way I won't have to feel the pain. Indispensable, just a plain old human being. Today don't mean a thing in a world that's so mean.
After the success of Superfly, Curtis had no shortage of movie offers, and in 1974 he embarked on his next soundtrack project. The movie was called Claudine and starred Diane Carroll in the title role and James Earl Jones as a smooth garbage collector love interest.
Your mama's going on a date. Can you dig that? A date. And she's going with me and she's going to have a good time. Can you dig that?
Curtis was particularly drawn to the character of Claudine, a single mother with 6 kids struggling to make ends meet on welfare. It reminded him of his mother and his difficult childhood growing up in the Cabrini Green projects on the north side of Chicago in the 40s and 50s.
My mother was a very strong woman, I would say, as I look back. We got along quite well in spite of the poverty. And of course, as young children, as long as there was happiness and respect within the house, we didn't know the difference until, of course, we became of age.
I have my reasons, and they wonder why. So there's a few tears, and sometimes I cry. I ain't no different than any other girl. My man is the same as every man in the world.
But I am married. I'm married to the welfare man. That's my husband. Makes me beg for them pennies. Starvation money. If I can't feed my kids, that's child neglect. Go out and get myself a little job on the side. If I don't tell him, then I'm cheating. If I stay at home, then I'm lazy. You can't win. Mr. Welfare, that is the nosiest husband in the world.
Girl, Claudine's gonna hold on.
Because the lead character in the movie was a woman, Curtis felt his music would have more of an impact if sung by a female vocalist. And so he partnered up with Gladys Knight and the Pips, who had just had the monster hit Midnight Train to Georgia. Curtis and his band laying down the grooves and the Pips adding their soulful vocals on top proved to be a quality combination. The movie itself is very good, with strong performances from the whole cast. Diane Carroll, who's had a distinguished career in film, TV and theatre, was even nominated for an Oscar for her portrayal of Claudine.
I was in Mexico resting, and they came to get me from the desk to say, there's a very important phone call. We had to interrupt you here on the beach where you're having your nap. And I went to the phone, and my press agent said to me, you have been nominated for Best Actress by the Academy. I said, are you serious? Because this is a little independent film, that was not going to be lucrative. And he said, yes, I'm serious. I said, all right, this is all new. What do I do now? He said, you pack your bag and you come home immediately. We'll begin to deal with this business. So I came home and I dealt with the fact that I had been nominated, and I was thrilled about it.
I'm so tired. I'm trying to prove my equal rights.
It was a wonderful experience. God, I had such a good time. It was just, I almost told them, you don't need to pay me. I almost told them that.
Keep away from it, Mr. Welfare.
Curtis did an excellent job with the Claudine soundtrack. It's more soulful than funky, reflecting the nature of the film, and his thoughtful lyrics, beautifully sung by Gladys Knight and the Pips, interweave with the movie's storyline perfectly. The soundtrack was critically and commercially successful, going to #1 on the US soul charts and further demonstrating Curtis' ability to put personal storytelling into song.
She was a reasonable mother, a woman of mentality, of mind that could talk, express herself. In many ways, lots of things that I achieved today are probably her achievements, but she was just in the wrong time zone as a young woman with children.
Wishing you well, your tears they just swell, so make yours a happy home.
Make yours a happy home.
If it's of something where everybody's heart is into it and it tends to prove righteousness or positive, you have to trust and you lend yourself out, hopefully for the results to be of a positive happening, you know.
Love today, so just make yours a happy, happy home.
Make yours a happy home.
I wanna do you right.
Freshaphonica, new directions in audio documentaries.
Hi, I'm Bill Cosby, and when Sidney Poitier called me and said, let's do it again, I said, do what? He said, let's do it again. I said, what? He said, you did Uptown Saturday Night, didn't you? I said, yes. He said, well, let's do it again. I said, all right. So I grew my beard, and there I am. You can take a look at me. There I am. And also in the movie is Sidney Poitier.
That's right, Biggie Smalls. I hear you taking bets on fights, big bets. Our women must never know nothing about this. Never.
In 1974, Sidney Poitier directed a comedy caper film called Uptown Saturday Night, starring himself and Bill Cosby.
How much you think we draw? You're crazy.
The movie was such a success at the box office that Poitier decided to make a sequel the following year in 1975. The sequel was called Let's Do It Again, and Curtis was commissioned to do the soundtrack. There were rumours he had originally been asked to star in the movie alongside Al Green, but in the end it was decided it would be another Poitier-Cosby double act, leaving Curtis to concentrate on the music. Around the same time, Curtis signed legendary family singing group the Staple Singers to his record label Curtom Records. He'd known Pops and Mavis Staples since the 50s, and he felt they'd be perfect for the Let's Do It Again soundtrack, so he set about writing the songs specifically with them in mind.
Let's do it in the morning, sweet breeze in the summertime, feel your sweet face, all laid up next to mine.
The music Curtis came up with was slightly more risque than the Staples' usual material, and Curtis had to use all his powers of persuasion to get the deeply religious Pops to record some of the lyrics, as Mavis Staples explains.
Curtis, when he told Pops, he said, okay, now, Pops, this is your part. And that part was, I like your lady, so fine with your pretty hair. And Pop said, Curtis, man, I'm not going to say that. He said, I'm not going to say that. I'm a church man. I'm not. And Curtis begged. He said, oh, Pops, come on, man. The Lord won't mind. And we wanted to do it so bad. You know, we wanted to hear our voices on the big screen. So we started begging Pops. We said, oh, come on, Daddy. You know, it's not like we switching over. It's a movie score. And Pop finally came on in and sang the song.
Now I like you, lady, so fine with your pretty hair. If you don't mind me compliment, just digging in the clothes you wear. I'm just a man now, don't you fear. like you love me now, don't you? Yeah. Do it again. Do it. I wanna do it again.
Regardless of pop's initial reservations, the single Let's Do It Again was a massive crossover success, hitting number one in both the Billboard Hot 100 and the soul charts. The song has since been covered and sampled by a huge number of artists, including George Benson, Lyndon David Hall, Ice Cube and John Legend.
I promise that I'll do it again. I promise that I'll do it.
Curtis's music is used fairly sparingly in Let's Do It Again, and the songs are not quite as integral to the plot as in Superfly or Claudine. However, despite the success of the title track, the rest of the album should definitely not be overlooked. It features great performances from the staples and some killer guitar from Curtis. A must-have album for any connoisseur of the funk.
New Orleans, what can I tell you? Hard for me to say. I got my mind blown in Louisiana. Everybody hustling.
So what's it gonna be? You coming back to Orleans, or you gonna ask the Grand Supreme to make out your funeral arrangements?
Well, I've always enjoyed going to New Orleans. I'd rather go to New Orleans than the cemetery. You're right.
The film itself is hardly a classic, but it was successful enough to prompt Poitier and Cosby to team up again in 1977 for a third and final instalment of their loose mid-70s trilogy of films.
Poitier celebrates while Cosby percolates.
I'm rich. I'm suave.
Lesson number one, you don't get something for nothing. I think they're trying to mug us. Looks like it.
Your shit, a piece of action.
The film was titled A Piece of the Action, and again starred Poitier and Cosby as two criminals blackmailed into working at a community youth centre by police detective James L. Jones.
5 years there, 15 in Joliet.
You're crazy.
Think about it, you got 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Deal?
Deal.
Deal.
Curtis was brought back to provide the music, though this time he faced more creative challenges than he'd ever encountered before. Around the time of A Piece of the Action, Curtis was juggling several different projects at once and trying to keep his Curtom record label afloat. He wasn't given much time to complete the soundtrack, so he brought star singer Roberta Flack into his recording studios with the intention of getting the job done quickly. Unfortunately, Roberta Flack couldn't produce the sound Curtis wanted. Her pure and sophisticated voice just didn't suit the raw, jamming party tracks that Curtis had composed. With time ticking away, Curtis abandoned the Roberta Flack sessions and brought in Mavis Staples to lay down her vocals instead.
Do you know how to locate yourself? Are you afraid that you need some help? Don't worry none about love. It takes your strength for them to use the shower.
Mavis was much more suited to the tracks, and they worked quickly to produce a respectably funky soundtrack just in the nick of time. A Piece of the Action wasn't much of a success at the box office, and Curtis and Mavis's soundtrack fared even less well. It does sound a little lacking in Curtis's usual care and attention, and is probably the least essential of all of his soundtracks. That being said, it's still a 1970s Curtis Mayfield production, which means you're always going to find some funky moments of quality.
Chocolate City stacked up like a brick. Smoking joint here, dancing, give a kick. People funky, humping up and down. With the music, girls, they gather round. Out south trying to find a job.
Freshaphonica, audio documentaries.
I always wanted to get my picture taken with Aretha Franklin. How about it for her? Of course, if she needed an introduction, I'd say she's probably the most gifted singer that ever lived.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, that Sparkle album has been very successful for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it has.
I think we're going to
Thank you, Curtis.
That's right, Curtis Mayfield's the producer.
That Curtis Mayfield sound is back. 5 new sensational songs from another spectacular Curtis Mayfield score. Some of it was singing. A lot of it was loving. Most of it was living that brought success to Sparkle.
Sweet baby, you're so cool. Ooh, loving you, baby. Don't make it hard when we're trying to make it. Our love so satisfied. Love standing side by side. So much faith, so much pride, loving you.
Sparkle was a 1976 film set in late 50s Harlem, following the story of 3 sisters who form a singing group and face the trials and tribulations of making it to the top.
We made the chart. Look, number 37 in Climate Fast. Woo! The next stop, Carnegie Hall.
Inspired by the story of Diana Ross and the Supremes, the plot was completely dependent on the music. So when Curtis was given the project, he had to make sure that he brought his absolute A-grade material to the table. Always one to rise to a challenge, Curtis didn't disappoint. The songs he came up with for Sparkle are among his very best, perfect within the context of the film, as well as sounding great when listening to them on their own.
If you look into your heart with a positive mind, take self-inventory of your woman and your glory, and leave the bad things behind. Everybody's got a story, yes they do, about love and the good things. But for the spices of your life, you have got to pay the price, if you know what I mean, yeah.
At the time the movie was made, the cast were relatively unknown, and Curtis worked Lonette McKee and Irene Cara, 2 of the leads, particularly hard in the studio to get the sounds he wanted. Curtis coaxed the best out of them, and they put in some really good vocal performances, making the songs the best part of the film.
Many say that I'm too young to let you know just where I'm coming from.
So it came as a huge shock and disappointment to the entire cast when they discovered that their versions of the songs were not going to be released separately as the official movie soundtrack. It wasn't just the cast that Curtis upset either. He knew he had a strong album of songs and wanted a bigger name to re-record the tracks and provide him with a hit record. So Curtis initially offered Sparkle to Carolyn Franklin, sister of Aretha, who loved the songs and was desperate to record them.
Woke up this morning, looking back over the dark of my life.
But also at that time, Aretha herself was in need of a hit record, and once she heard the tracks Curtis had composed, she was keen to record them too.
I had many friends. I had many friends up until then.
The fight over who would record Sparkle led to a huge falling out between the sisters, especially when Curtis expressed a preference for working with Aretha, going back on his offer to Carolyn. An opportunity to work with the Queen of Soul was too big for Curtis to turn down, both artistically and commercially.
Sister Gay. Sister Gay.
What was it like working with Curtis, or have you worked with him before?
No, that was my first time, and I enjoyed it. We kind of fought a little bit, just a little bit, but everything worked out fine.
I sparkle, loving the way that I do. It is true, I feel so good, just having you.
Actually, it worked out better than fine. Despite a slight disagreement during recording, Curtis and Aretha worked very well together, completing the excellent album in just 5 days. It also provided the hit record Curtis and Aretha wanted, going to number 1 in the R&B albums chart and producing a number 1 soul single. Time also healed the wounds between the Franklin sisters and between the cast and Curtis. All involved eventually acknowledged that the Queen of Soul did a fantastic job, and upon hearing the whole album, it's impossible to disagree. In her autobiography over 20 years later, Aretha herself stated that working with Curtis was one of the highlights of her entire career. Sparkle the movie performed quite modestly at the box office in 1976, though it gained a cult status over the following years. So much so that it was remade in 2012, featuring Whitney Houston and Jordan Sparks, keeping in some of Curtis's classic original compositions and showing the timelessness of his songwriting.
Okay, just going out there and look pretty. But this isn't what we rehearsed.
The remakes were good, but you can't beat the magic of Curtis and Aretha working at their peak.
Everybody around seems so uptight, but nothing's wrong. It's alright with my man, my man. I like the kinds of ways we have our fun. His loving ways sends me on and on. Yeah, with my man. People out there can understand. I'm giving him something he can feel.
To Freshaphonica.
Downtown, uptown, midtown, crosstown. His body was found all over town, seeking a cause, seeking the cause.
Miguel Piñero was an articulate playwright and poet from Puerto Rico who grew up in New York City.
Found in the potter's fields of an OD, found in the Boweries with the DDT. His legs were left in Vietnam. His arms were found in Sing Sing. His scalp is on Nixon's belt. His blood paints the streets of the ghetto. His eyes are still looking for...
Unfortunately, he was also a self-destructive drug addict, which led to many criminal convictions and several stints in jail. In 1972, while serving time in New York's notorious Sing Sing prison, Piñero attended a writing workshop and ended up writing a play entitled Short Eyes. The hard-hitting play was set in a prison, telling the story of the prisoner's reaction to the arrival of a child abuser, or in New Yorican slang, a short eyes.
You listen,
And you listen good, because I'm only going to say it once. This is a nice, quiet floor. You never had too much trouble on this floor. With you, I smell trouble.
Word got out about Short Eyes, and upon his release from jail, Pinheiro was invited to put on the play throughout several Manhattan theatres. Short Eyes became a surprise success, winning several literary prizes and 6 Tony Awards, awarded for excellence in Broadway theatre. Film rights were purchased and the wheels were set in motion for a big screen adaptation. Curtis Mayfield's involvement in Short Eyes was more complex this time around. Ever the ambitious businessman, Curtis had set up a movie production company called Curtom Films, and he felt that investing in this motion picture would be a great way to kick off his new venture.
Well, this prison life's a pressure, keeps my back against the wall. Constant lookout for the snakes and the bandits. Program leans toward obscene law.
Of course, Curtis was to compose the soundtrack, but he was also to make his movie debut, playing the role of Pappy, an inmate who provides a wise voice of reason in an atmosphere of chaos.
Ain't nobody willing to give up nothing but hard times and bubble gum. You know they don't allow chewing gum in the joint.
And you're serious.
You're as serious as terminal cancer, and that is the final stage, brother man.
With so much invested in the film, financially and artistically, Curtis desperately needed the project to be a success.
All I wanna do is satisfy. If it ain't good enough, well, you know I tried.
Short Eyes is a powerful movie, filmed in a real-life detention centre, which gives it an extra feeling of authenticity. The cast put in convincing performances, showing both the brutality and humanity of prison life, resulting in a film that's often harrowing to watch.
Listen, Juan, try to understand me. Will you try to understand?
Motherfucker, try to understand you. Let me tell you something. If I wasn't trying to understand you, I would have killed you stone dead, punk, that moment that you said that thing about the Rican girl.
Wasting away. I'm getting old. Don't make no waves. I do what I'm told.
Miguel Pinheiro was brought back to write the screenplay and also appears in the film. A real-life plot twist occurred during filming when he was arrested for an unrelated misdemeanor and was actually detained in the same prison they were filming in.
Who thought that up, your mama?
It's the soundtrack, though, that's the real star of the show. For the first soundtrack since Superfly, Curtis was back behind the mic. Again, his lyrics weave themselves around the storyline beautifully, and his guitar playing is the most funkily aggressive of his career.
Hey, now I claim to be a bad-titted sucker, and I plan to stay a black motherfucker. Stepped in depth of the same living hell, so I ain't too proud to die here as well.
Unfortunately, despite the excellent script and acting, Short Eyes the movie sank without a trace when it was released in cinemas in September 1977. It was clear that despite its popularity on stage, moving such heavy content matter to the big screen was not going to be a commercial success.
Ain't nothing but a little doo-wop. You better doo-dee-wop back into that day room.
Curtis's soundtrack also performed badly, only scraping into the R&B charts at number 59, and it marked the first time Curtis had experienced an out-and-out flop as a solo artist.
Administrative segregation.
Which is a nice way of saying solitary confinement.
Take him down after the lock-in.
While the movie and soundtrack were a failure in 1977, time has been kind to both and has proved that a lack of commercial success doesn't always equal critical failure. 4 decades on, Curtis's soundtrack still sounds funky and fresh, and the Short Eyes album has become something of an underground classic. It's a bit of a cliche to say they don't make them like they used to, so I'm not going to say it. But in my opinion, Short Eyes is a fantastic soundtrack, with enough nuanced, intelligent, soulful funk to put it on a par with Superfly, and should be considered in the same vein as one of the greatest soundtracks of the 70s.
Just wanna warn your children some. Short Eyes is pushing #1. Girls, when you shake your shaggy shaggy, beware. Dudes, when you hang out in the alley, beware. Dirty, 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 short eyes. Every kind of people so disguised. Brother man, we see them penalized.
1977 marked the end of Curtis's incredible golden period, which had lasted almost 20 years since he turned professional at the age of 16. The failure of Short Eyes put him under huge financial pressure, and things would never quite be the same again. With falling sales and the rise of disco, Curtis found himself struggling to stay commercial, causing him to seriously scale back his business empire as the 70s turned into the 80s. Curtis did contribute songs to several other movies later in his career, most notably Return of the Superfly in 1990. But it's his 70s soundtracks where he was operating at his creative peak, fully in control and crafting the music according to his unique artistic vision, which still sounds pioneering today. The work with the impressions, the solo albums, the soundtracks, the associated artists. His back catalogue is a phenomenal body of work, and I urge you all to delve back into that treasure trove of tracks and discover for yourselves the magic of Curtis Mayfield.
I sparkle, loving the way that I do. It is true, I feel so good, just having you breathlessly.
I would like to think that my music will carry on a long ways, after my life itself.
We were so loving, wasn't we? I'd always known it could be. Don't wanna do nothing, girl, against your will. This ain't no cheap thrill. I really mean it's the way you feel. If ever you fall and you don't know what to do, I have nothing but myself, and I give myself to you. Send your tinkle sparkle. Hope the love never breaks away. Keep a little fire burning every day.
That was the soundtracks of Curtis Mayfield. I've been Ben Clarke, and thanks for listening. Freshaphonica is available to listen to at freshaphonica.com, or you can subscribe for free via iTunes. Show notes for this episode are available on the website, and if you like what you heard, please share with a Curtis Mayfield fan and leave a review on iTunes. Until next time.
Bye-bye, and thank you ever so much. It's been really wonderful for you to have me.